We're going to invite people to come and share stories about Vic.
Vic just strips off all his clothes and dives into the ocean.
And I look over and there is Vic Fischer gathering signatures in a parking lot in a grocery store in Seward.
Victor Fischer is our Forrest Gump of Alaska. He's everywhere!
You're a huge part of the reason I'm here, raising my family here.
I just want to say hello and greetings to everyone who came. I apologize to those I haven't been able to give a hug to yet. Just come up to me and my arms will be wide open. What are you going to do next year? Are you going to vote? Yes.
Vic Fischer is extraordinary because he is both visionary, but he's also a warrior.
He is consistently outraged by injustice.
He was present at the birth of the state government. He has contributed tremendously to our understanding of what the framers of the Constitution had in mind.
Not only did Victor help write the Constitution, he has a vision about how we're supposed to be and what will benefit all.
Vic's legacy is one of caring about good government and instilling in others the caring about good government.
He's an intellect almost in a class by himself.
Victor has a genuine concern for helping people.
Is this what we want? How will this affect the quality of life as well as the economy of Alaska?
I think he feels that's his purpose in life.
His motivation was truth. I hope we have more Vic Fischers in the future.
I'm going to bring some color into here. Even as a kid, I like to have a garden and grow things. And it's really fun to watch things grow.
Vic was born in 1924 in Berlin. And his mom was a Russian citizen and his dad was an American citizen. And then he basically spent 10 of the next 12 years in Russia, growing up in Moscow.
My father was an American foreign correspondent who worked out of Berlin, Germany, and out of Moscow, Russia. As an 8-year-old kid, I remember it very, very clearly. The Nazi stormtroopers were going down the streets, beating up on people. Right before my eyes, democracy was killed by Hitler and his people.
The parades are longer. The bands play louder.
I got back to Russia when I was 9 years old, and then the Stalin terror began.
Hundreds of thousands fall in the bloodbath.
We finally left there in 1939.
He was born an American citizen because his dad was an American. But he had an experience that was more like an immigrant in starting life in this country. So when he came to the United States in 1939, when he was 14 years old, he did not speak any English.
His parents were highly educated, and I think Victor felt that he had a lot of opportunity. His father was good friends with Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt.
Eleanor Roosevelt made the role of First Lady a dynamic one as she walked with the great and the humble.
One of my favorite stories about Victor is when he came to the United States, he was invited to dinner at the White House, and he didn't speak a word of English, Admiral Byrd was there, and Victor loved Admiral Byrd.
Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the only man to fly the Atlantic and across both poles, back from further explorations on the South Polar continent.
Vic finishes high school in New York, then he goes off to the University of Wisconsin. It's his first semester in college. And then
the White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
And so he enlisted in the United States Army when he was 18 years old. And they put him on a troop ship.
I thought, well, if I survive this war, I'll look at going west. And I started reading through the ship's library.
There was a book about the territory of Alaska, and he read it. And it sounded fabulous to him as a place where you could go and it could be beautiful and be adventurous and you could be like an Arctic explorer.
I thought, wow, that is the place I want to go, as far west and as far north as I can get.
When they came back to the States, he got an undergraduate degree in economics and then went off to Massachusetts Institute of Technology and got a degree in city and regional planning. The first position as a town site planner in Alaska working for the Bureau of Land Management was posted at MIT as an opportunity for graduates. And he took it right off the bulletin board so nobody else could go.
I made sure I got that job.
His first experience in Alaska, auctioning land off the back of a pickup truck, he was creating new towns in different parts of the state.
What brings people to Alaska? I think there's really only three things. Escapism is one. Adventure is certainly one. An opportunity.
It just sounded like a place where one can go and do and be whatever you wanted. It's not like the westward move across America, which was largely economic, to get land, to get jobs, to build a railroad or whatever. I think to be in Alaska takes more than a job, and more than owning land, having piece of it. It's the availability of the environment, of freedom that make Alaska.
When Vic came, it was really opening up. There was a great growth period. The idea of the hacking out your house out of the forest in a log cabin was moving more into an urban pattern. And Vic showed up when that was kind of happening.
To me, Alaska has changed tremendously, phenomenally. It still is a place that will survive no matter who's president or governor or mayor or assembly member, because it's the people who count. They care about Alaska.
Yes, sir, Alaska is officially a state. Now they can send you here without a court-martial.
Vic ran for the Constitutional Convention in 1955. There were 55 people who were elected to be the delegates, and he was one of those 55.
Well, Vic, when we first started talking about getting together, I went and pulled your book off the shelf and reread it. Tell me about the convention. I mean, it must have been an exciting thing for you to take part in.
Having arrived for the convening of the Alaska Constitutional Convention, I do accordingly call the convention to order.
Well, it was an exciting time. The convention was certainly the biggest highlight of my life.
Now we'd like to have a roll call of the delegates to see which of those are present.
It was held on the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
C. Ember.
Here.
Helen Fisher.
Here.
Victor Fischer.
Here.
Alaskans had no say over what happened in Alaska everything was controlled by bureaucrats from Washington, D.C. And it was very frustrating because being an Alaskan, I was no longer a full-fledged citizen of the United States. I had lost the right to vote for president. Territorial legislature decided we ought to write a constitution to demonstrate that we are ready for statehood.
Delegates to the Alaska Constitutional Convention. This is a momentous occasion in Alaska's long history under the American flag.
A bunch of us, young ones mostly, veterans, we formed a citizens' lobby. Our group was called Operation Statehood.
So tell me about Operation Statehood.
Whenever there were hearings held in Washington on statehood for Alaska, we would send messages, we would send forget-me-not flowers. We even organized a flight to Washington, D.C. and walked the halls of Congress. The wonderful thing about the statehood movement and the Constitutional Convention was that Alaskans were totally united. It was a political issue, but it was not a partisan issue.
Alaska celebrates the long-awaited grant of statehood with enthusiasm worthy of gold rush days. Once Russian America, then Seward's Folly, now becoming the newest state in the Union, Alaska stands on the threshold of a dynamic new era.
This is the signature page of the Constitution. To me, Article 1 of the Constitution, which is called Declaration of Rights, probably the most important. This Constitution is dedicated to the principles that all persons have a natural right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of rewards of their own industry, that all persons are equal and entitled to equal rights, opportunities, and protection under the law, and that all persons have correspondent obligations to the people and to the state. And what that says essentially is you must be involved in public affairs, but above all, you vote. You vote because this is your constitution, this is your state, this is your community.
Vic got involved in elected politics, and he ran for the Alaska State Senate from downtown Anchorage in 1980, and he served until 1986. And during that time, he had the opportunity to work on some more long-term thinking about Alaska.
In order to eliminate an incentive to overbuild dams to provide...
Well, Vic came down to the Senate at the same time I moved over from the House, and I served with Vic. Vic was viewed as a liberal Democrat. I was viewed as a conservative Republican.
But Victor gets along with everyone, and a lot of state senators like Rick Halford used to hang out at our office.
What you learn in life is that your best teachers are probably the people you think you disagree with. Vic was a great teacher.
I do not oppose changing this provision, but I would like to see it done rationally.
Rick Halford ended up co-sponsoring the rape and marriage statute.
Most of the great battles that you have in the political process are between the interests of the present and the interests of the future.
He understood natural resource development. He understood the framework of how state government worked. But he also said, you know, how could we use our state investments to better people's lives? So he had a huge commitment to education, commitment to job training, commitment to childcare and early childhood development, and really pushed those agendas forward in our state.
We have close to 2,000 people. More than that!
He has been an incredibly effective activist on a lot of different issues of the state. And he's been fighting these battles for going on a century now.
As one of the founders of Alaska statehood, I'm appalled by Governor Dunleavy's proposed budget, which drastically cuts funding for K-12 education and the university.
We live in Vic Fischer's universe. We live in the legal framework that he helped create. And for those of us who live in Anchorage, we live in a city shaped by him. When I think about Vic Fischer's legacy for Alaska, it's not only the constitutional protections we have as citizens, but it's the very cities we inhabit. I live near a trail and a park that Vic Fischer planned. Generations of people have grown up in this really wonderful place to live and raise a family.
Well, great to see everybody. When I was in the state senate, I worked in the resources committee. We were dealing with amendments to the rural subsistence law. We came up with an amendment requiring that the Board of Fisheries specifically provide for non-rural residents of Alaska to have access to fish for personal consumption.
Little guy.
And it's working real well.
Whew. Made me earn it.
Michael has a proxy for me because I'm a senior citizen. Under Alaska law, we're not deprived just because we're old and decrepit.
It really goes back to the law that Vic wrote in 1984. And urban communities weren't able to actually harvest fish for their families the way that subsistence fishermen do. It allowed an equal access to filling your freezer. It's not a sport fishing, it's more than that.
There are a lot of friends here. Every so often, you have an eagle come right along the tree line above us. The mountains across the way and the sky, and they're just beautiful. A person who looks at my life can see that a life can be well lived if you open yourself up to what the world provides and how you can help other people.
Hi, Grandma, Grandpa.
40 years later.
The man of the hour.
Vic Fischer.
Politics.
Local government.
Constitution. My wife, Jane Einvig.
Constitutional Convention.
Democracy was killed. The dream was taken away. I came as a stranger to America.
Vic has always found an opportunity to grab the interesting things that are going on. Being part of the Constitutional Convention was a big one, but so was being a city planner in Anchorage in the 1950s. So was being in Washington, D.C. in the early 1960s during the Kennedy administration, or coming back to Anchorage following the earthquake. So was being part of opening up the Russian Far East. So was riding a camel in India when he was 92. Vic has always been an adventurous one.
I think what I treasure most is his sort of pragmatic realism and his sense of calmness while working through some of the most intricate kinds of issues and discussions.
Vic had a life as an academic, as a leader at the university, at the Institute of Social and Economic Research, or as it was then, the Institute of Everything. He helped create it, gave it vision, gave it life. ISER was and has been the go-to place for legislators and other policymakers to get factual information.
He's been an actor in some of the best things that ever happened to Alaska. He is one of my heroes. In 1957, he was a co-sponsor of a bill to abolish the death penalty in territorial Alaska, which is one big reason we don't have it in statehood.
He doesn't like bullies at all, but he certainly doesn't like a bully who is the government. When he got to eliminate the death penalty, he said the government does not have the right to kill anyone.
The Honorable Justices of the Supreme Court of the State.
Vic and those who wrote our Constitution put in there the whole process of appointing judges based on merit.
Victor Fischer, Bella Hammond, Violet Wilson.
I served on the State Judicial Council for almost 7 years. And every time we went through interviews and made recommendations to the governor, I thanked Vic.
We will take this matter under advisement and issue a written decision later.
Judges are not elected. You don't get politicians on the bench.
The way that we select judges, it's the most perfect in the union.
I was the chairman of the board of the Alaska Commercial Company. When Vic and I were the very first Alaskans Americans into Mogollon. Now, the Chamber of Commerce thought they were the first, the state thought they were, no.
And let me assure President Gorbachev, whatever deep differences divided us in the past, the United States and the American people approach every issue with a sincere belief that our two nations can find common ground.
I traveled to Russia with him 7 or 8 times. Mogollon, Pavlovsk-Kamchatsky, Moscow. Vic was responsible for connecting people.
It diffused so much of that hype coming out of the Cold War. It alleviated the fear.
Those human connections, I think, survive even in a time of political challenges.
When Vic was 80 years old, that's old in most people's book, he picked up a paintbrush for the first time in his life. And the first painting he ever did, he gave to me on my birthday. He is the person who is always going to pick up all the dishes. He's the person who's going to make sure that the kids have their boots and their hats on. He's the person who's going to make sure that the secretary who's uncomfortable at the party, he's talking to her. And he's been that way for the 40 years that I've known him.
We believe in a better community and a better state and a better life for everybody. We both have been totally against discrimination of any kind, be it economic, social, sexual. We not only have values, but we have defended our values, we have promoted our values, we have stood up for the values that are important to us.
You're doing great. I love your values. I love the values you hold. And the part where
you always have.
No.
Well, I had lots of stories that I used to tell my friends around the dinner table or the campfire, and they always wanted to have more. As an Alaskan, I am among
those who have traveled the farthest in space and time
towards the better, more just society our state embodies,
and which our Constitution assures. My
motivation for writing is as a witness to these events, as a participant in many, and as a product of the rise from repression to freedom.
He writes, I'm dedicated to those without power.
Without power.
Without power.
The poor, the underdog.
I believe in fairness and equality.
This book was written on our kitchen table for 3 years. I'm quite familiar with this book. But when you asked me to say something about a line that I like in particular. I'll go to the introduction. He was opining about what he would say to the people who were graduating from the University of Alaska. So this is what he said.
I found I had two essential things to say. I encouraged the graduates to find, evolve, and strengthen their values and to live by them.
And I demanded of them generous participation in their state and their community
with responsibility to their fellow citizens. That's it. That's who he is.
As an American, I live the miracle of freedom and opportunity.
I felt the positive power of democracy in ordinary people's hands.
I saw how a single person can help shape the future.
I saw how a single person can help shape the future. My name is Vic Fischer, and if life can be judged by friends, I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I love you all. I love Alaska. Thank you for being here.